Hey, Dave.
Hi, Dean.
Dave, okay, so uh, who are you?
Isn't that the question we're all asking ourselves?
Am
I'm Dave Poulos. I'm a fractional CMO working for Granite Partners.
I? Okay. So, Dave, here's the hypothetical for this episode, okay? You've signed a brand new client engagement and a brand new client. It's a 12-month engagement. Today's day one. You're just starting. It's like 9 a.m. 12 on day one. From your point of view, like what is going to happen? What are you likely to see or need to do in the first 90 days of this brand new engagement?
Well, the first 90 days are critical to an engagement like this because this is where you get to ask all the questions as the new guy. There's nothing off the table, there's nothing off limits. You have no access to grind. You don't know who anybody is, and they don't know you. So you're presenting yourself in a way that allows you to ask questions that other people in the organization cannot, either for political reasons or for other reasons. So you get to take advantage of that by asking all sorts of questions and digging in deeply in order to do an assessment. And you're there to assess the staff that's working either in marketing or that needs to be hired for marketing or who's been doing it up till now. You're there to assess their efforts and their results and to find out if everything is wired correctly and who holds the power and who doesn't for decision making, what hoops you have to jump through to get those decisions implemented,
Right.
all those background questions that you cannot ask and are never outlined in a description or a case study or anything else. You don't get that stuff until you're in it, until it's yours to do. So that's the time you get to ask those questions. And those 90 days are dedicated largely to doing those assessments, including talking to customers at great length if you can,
Right.
because that's what's going to set your tone for your strategy. That's what's going to inform your further questions down the road as to where you want to go and who's going to do it.
All right. That's good. Hey, Perryn, how are you?
Hey, Dean, doing well.
Perryn, tell folks a little bit about you and then kind of the same question. Like, what problems or situations do you normally find yourself wading into when you start with a new client?
All right. Well, I'm Perryn Olson, a fractional CMO and partner with Alt CMO. We're a construction-focused fractional CMO company. So those first 90 days are really important for just trying to dive in. It's a lot of fun, I find, trying to see new brands, meet new people, understand what's going on figure out the spider web, if there's multiple brands, multiple business units. Generally, I try to even start with why is the company started, kind of get an essence of the company and the brand, understand that evolution, things like that. Then also kind of why did you hire us? Sometimes they're a little guarded when you're in that sales phase of why they're
Mhm.
hiring you. They don't want to give away anything, but okay, we're now on the same team. Why'd you hire us? What's broken? What's changing? Or what are you trying to change? And that will help lead us to things. Some clients are trying to spin off different business units into new brands. Some are trying to salvage what they have now. They're shrinking. They have new marketing coordinator that's just they realize they're on the fifth marketing coordinator in 5 years and they need help. They're realizing they're the problem, not the marketing coordinators. So a lot of times that will kind of help understand. And then really, what are the bigger business goals? What are we trying to do? Not just the 90 days. What are we trying to do a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, things like that. So and even just a personal interest. I'm amazed how many CEOs I've talked to. And I'm like, hey, if you weren't the CEO of this construction company, what would you be doing? And they're like, oh, I'd be touring the country with my rock band. I'm like,
Mhm.
I had that answer twice in the same week when I was onboarding two different clients years ago. And I was like, okay, what am I missing that CEOs of construction companies are in rock bands on the side? So,
Yeah. What is it about your prospecting engine that's like picking up all of these like rocker CEOs, right?
oh, and
Okay.
they couldn't be any more mild mannered that you would never guess that these two were rock stars, on the side.
So let's talk about the CEOs then for a second, okay?
Yeah.
Parent, so imagine that you're the CEO of the client company instead of the CMO, right?
Hmm.
At some point you had to like convince somebody, like investors or a board or leadership team or your own brain, that it was worth allocating the spend to bring in a 12-month fractional CMO in this case for this
Yep.
hypothetical, right? How are you going to get maximum value out of that spend over the next 12 months?
Yeah, the big thing, share the big goals. What are the big hairy audacious goals? for them personally, what are they trying to drive? Where are they struggling? One of the big things I find clients hide things. They don't want to share the bad news. They don't want to share the pending lawsuit. You do a quick Google search and you can find all the bad PR that they've had. They don't tell you that. So like, don't hide your
Yeah.
skeletons. I'm on your team. I need to know what's going on. And you at least need to know how to react to them or know what might be happening. Uh, share the KPIs. That's the other thing I think people don't do. And one of the reasons I really like the fractional side versus just more the agency world is, in agency world, you do a rebrand, they move on, you're done. And you don't necessarily see the KPIs tick up or go down. You can't counteract, you can't iterate and things like that. So like, I think it's just sharing more and not trying to hide, oh, I don't want the CMO to see this, or I only want to focus on the negative or what have you. It's just, let's share this and let's be on the same team. We should be going towards the same goal, because one of the coolest things about marketing is it's generally driven by profits or revenue. So if we do a good job, the company grows, the marketing budget grows, we can do more fun things, and we can keep growing. It's a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point. So.
And Dave, let me rephrase the question or invert it a little bit. Right? You've worked with lots of clients at this point. Someone allocated the spend, right, and approved it. How do CEOs or even how do companies tend to waste the money that they spend on their fractional CMOs? What do they do that they should have stopped doing or not done, or what do they not do that they should have done, in order to not waste the money by bringing in this expert?
What I have found is that they don't use the time they have to ask questions and to learn, especially CEOs. They, to your point, have egos the size that need to be taken from the air, or they wouldn't be in that spot. But if they fail to share that vision with you adequately, or they fail to share other aspects of what's going on in the company and the reason for the hire and all the things that most people need to know in order to do a good job, you're going to be presented with blind spots. And if they don't want to learn and they don't want to grow and they don't want to fill in those blind spots so you can help them, you're kind of hamstrung in trying to give them what they need. So the more they can communicate, the more they can download to you. We have a virtually bottomless bucket to absorb information. As short-termers, we've been trained to get up to speed quickly and to ask those really cutting questions and get right to the heart of it very quickly. So don't feel you need to spend, a month getting around to having a meeting with me to download your daily thoughts as to why we're not on Instagram or why we're not doing, videos for this or whatever. Let me know what you want, and I'll find a way to give it to you if it fits the strategy and it makes sense. But any reticence or hesitance to provide information usually ends up backfiring.
Well, all right. Let's imagine I am the client CEO. Okay. I've got some people. Maybe I have a big one. Most likely I have a relatively small marketing team, a few staffers, mostly junior, maybe mid-level people. There's probably been supervision of the marketing staffers. There's maybe even been management. But this is probably, if I'm hiring a fractional CMO, this is probably the first CMO of any kind the company's had, right? Likely. And there's never been leadership in marketing at this point, right? So I'm looking at this team and I'm looking at them today. It's your first day as fractional CMO. Dave, and I'm thinking about 12 months from now, supposedly your exit from this engagement, right? How is that team going to be different 12 months from now than it is today?
My goal when I am in that situation is to weld that team into a cleanly functioning, fully informed machine that does what it needs to do virtually on its own. My job is to work my way out of a job in terms of managing that team, because you're right, the prior supervision has been only that in most cases. And if it's not coming from a place of authority, it's coming from a place of need. And need is not what drives things forward. You mentioned that this is a fractional CMO. That stands for chief. Chief implies leadership, and you have to show that leadership both by example and by mentoring from the first day. And the first day is the day you allay all the fears, because everybody doesn't know you and you're coming in there cold, and you're supposed to suddenly be working with them and providing them with leadership and direction. They don't know what you're like. They don't know how your style works with theirs. They don't know if you're going to be asking them to do impossible things, or if they're going to hate you and want to leave, or love you and never want to be promoted because they don't want your job. There's 1,000 thoughts going through their head, and you have to allay the ones that are based in fear, in that, yes, I'm not going to come in and fire everyone. Yeah, I'm not going to come in and change everything you do every day. I'm going to assess, I'm going to guide, I'm going to shift, I'm going to optimize. But wholesale bull in a china shop activity is not just going to happen. That's not my style, and it's not purposeful for you to engage in that kind of stuff. So you allay the fears, and then you start building. You strip everybody down to the basics, and you say, okay, what is it you do? And once you know what they each do, or what they think they do, then you start looking for strengths and weaknesses and allocating those people, putting the right people in the right seats on the bus. Once that happens and they start to see the magic of actually supporting each other and working together, and that their skill sets are complementary and not competitive, things seem to move much more smoothly forward. Now you present the grand vision for what they need to be doing, and they all know which direction to row and which oar is theirs. It's very straightforward.
And Perryn, answer me this. Looking at like the team, not even the individuals, let's say, but at the team, do you normally have to take time to sort of figure out how you're going to balance it? Like, senior versus junior, insider versus outsiders, agencies versus contractors versus FTEs. Right?
Yeah. You gotta see what they have now. I mean, that's even that first 90 days, you're trying to figure out what's there now, what vendors are there, and then you create that strategy. You figure out the gap analysis, where we're trying to go, what's missing. I started, actually, it was an internal job, but I was a fractional CMO for 3 companies and 8 brands in my last job. It's all one owner. And I had a marketing manager in one business unit and a marketing coordinator on the other. And I found out the marketing coordinator really wanted to be more of a visual designer, and the marketing manager didn't like doing design. So instead of making them each vertically aligned in their business units, we put them into more skill based. And then I started grooming the visual designer to be a visual designer and growing her in that way. And the marketing manager took that off her plate. And also, they weren't talking. They had been working together for a year and a half, and they weren't talking. So we just started having like weekly meetings and things like that. It was just making us work as a team. And it was just interesting that their own satisfaction went up, because they both thought, I'm about ready to quit, because they weren't happy. They're both doing jobs they didn't like doing. So that's, as far as just kind of understanding, what do they want to do, where do they want to grow, and just it's much like the conversation with the CEO. You want to be on the same team. You have to. That's one of the cool things about a fractional executive, is they should be part internal and part external, and you should feel like you're on the same team, because you got more skin in the game, that you're going to be there long term versus a traditional consultant that's kind of in and out.
Well, let's talk about like the most junior person in marketing.
Yeah.
So imagine like your best friend comes to you and says, "Hey, Perryn, my kid graduated from college and is now just got hired, first ever full-time job, and so is now the most junior person on a marketing team. And there's a fractional CMO that also just came in the same week. Any advice for my kid, either as like, hey, you're just starting your career in marketing, you should think about this, or even, hey, you just got a fractional CMO and you're the most junior person in marketing. Like, here's something you might want to think about."
Yeah, I think everyone's going to kind of find their role. Is where do they fit in? I generally tell people when they're starting their careers, start wide, figure out what you're good at, and start going deep at that point. The T shape is what the industry generally calls it. And then as you grow, you become more like, I don't know, the newer term is going to inverted pyramid. You start growing more kind of a mixture of deep and wide. But you're trying to figure out, where do you fit into this company? Why did they hire this person? And which is also very awkward. I've had that happen one time. Was I was hired by a marketing manager, and by the time I started, the marketing manager was gone. So then I had to go report to CEO. And it's like, I thought I was getting fired in my first day because the person that hired me is gone. So trying to make sure that you understand what is their role, and also understand they're trying to figure themselves out. If it's a new fractional CMO, they're trying to figure stuff out and figure out the strategy. So it's kind of, where do you add value to your company and to yourself? There should be a win-win, where you're learning something and improving your own skills that also then help the company.
And so, Dave, I want to invert that question a little bit, like expand it a little bit. So imagine that you're talking to someone who is just starting their career here in 2024, right, in marketing. And, let's assume they're going to stay in marketing for their career, okay? Is there, what sort of like one or two things would you tell them they absolutely should be paying attention to, like either as a theme or a specialty or a tool or an innovation or whatever? And what's something that they can, in marketing, that they can safely ignore and not ever worry about learning how to do well?
Now that's interesting. I've never been asked what people can ignore.
Yeah.
You're trying to ignore the noise, more to your point, but
Well,
fads,
like,
the
would
next
you tell
shiny object.
anyone you don't ever have to worry about learning radio advertising? You don't have to worry about TV ads. You don't have to worry about print. You don't have to worry about mail, like snail mail. You don't have to worry about whatever. You don't have to worry about Facebook, because 10 years from now, no one's going to be advertising that. Like, what would you like? What should they definitely make sure that they dig into a bit, and what can they safely ignore? Given that, I mean, marketing has been around for modern marketing. Even modern marketing is like 150 years old, right? There's a lot
At
that's
least
been done, right? It's a big field.
it's all been done. It's all been done. And in fact, to your point, I just used skills in all 5 of those areas this morning. So it's not a matter of ignoring, it's a matter of prioritization.
Sure.
My goal when I walk into a situation where there's a very junior marketer or not even a marketer yet is to instill 3 things. 1, a curiosity. Most schools and universities and life by the time you're 25 has done its best to kill off your curiosity. People have no imagination left anymore. They're simply little trained drones ready to sit at a desk and clack away at keys. Worthless. Find something you're curious about and dig in and see what you can learn about it. 2, always be learning. There's always something new coming down the pike, especially in marketing. There's only so many ways you can wrangle that spreadsheet, but there's a lot of ways you can skin a cat in marketing. And there's always a new one coming down the pike, and things underneath you shift. The audiences change, their demographics change, their point of view changes, their patience changes. Their attention spans are minuscule at this point. Everything has to move much more quickly than it used to. So all this instant gratification stuff is feedback to you that says we got to have stuff that moves quick and it's entertaining and engaging. You wouldn't have had to worry about that during things like billboards and print ads and radio. It's long term. It's pound the ground all the time. It's there for a long, long time. You don't have to worry about fast. Now you do. So that's one thing. You have to move with whatever is current, but that doesn't mean you chase the next shiny object. Guys that are specialists in tools find themselves out of a job in about 6 months because that tool has bypassed them or is no longer relevant or valid, or a newer one or a better one has superseded it. You're obsolete. Not a good plan. You want to make sure that you have a solid grounding in the basics, the fundamentals of blocking and tackling, approaching customers, talking to customers, learning the hierarchy, figuring out needs and preferences, and how to showcase those and build a brand. If you can do those things, the tactics almost don't matter.
By the way, speaking of billboards, I didn't think to add billboards. It reminds me of something that someone had pointed out, like this is a while ago, that the most dangerous and at the same time safest job in all of advertising for the past 50 years has been the people who put up the billboards, right? Most dangerous job in that, you're high up and there's it's one of the few marketing jobs where there's like a real chance of physical injury or death. And on the other hand, they had interviewed like a whole bunch of guys to do this. There weren't any women that were like getting up on top of these things and sort of rolling them up, right? They said not one of them had ever heard of anyone ever being laid off in the 30 years that they'd been doing it. So it was
I
at
wish
the
that
same
were to
time the most
continue to be the
dangerous and
case.
safest job in marketing.
It's probably not going to continue to be the case, unfortunately, as digital signage starts to take over those things, and it's no longer press sheets and roll-ups. It's flipping buttons and programming new ads in. Those guys actually are going to turn into dinosaurs, just like pressmen.
Well, they're mostly
plate
retiring out
makers and
anyway,
those
so I don't
guys.
think anyone's going to worry about it. Okay.
Technology moves. You got to be aware.
Okay, so here's where we'll go next. Okay, Dave, I'm going to have you on this podcast. Who you're paired up with as a co-guest, completely random, right? Everyone picks their own time slot. We don't curate. We don't match people. Part of the energy or just fun of the podcast is different points of view, wildly different experiences sometimes. And I'm going to have you ask Perryn a question in a minute, but first. My question for you, and like, I'm not trying to be impolite. I'm not trying to be mean. I am just going to be blunt. There are easier ways to make a living, bro. Like why?
I have a couple of good reasons. Why I'm in marketing is a different question than why I'm a fractional. But if you're asking why I'm in marketing, it's because my curiosity and my imagination run amok. I need an outlet. I need to create things. I need to build things. I need to do stuff that's fun. And I may as well get paid for it. And at the top of the pyramid, you're getting paid pretty handsomely to, play with crayons and draw stuff. So it's a fun job that everybody envisioned when it wasn't fun down in the trenches, when you're actually having to do all this and spending hours poring over merge purge reports and digging into Google Analytics. That's not fun. But at the top of the pyramid where the strategy is, that's fun. And that's what I like to do. Now, as a fractional, I get to walk in and do the good stuff, do the customer interviews, do the research, do the homework, do the strategy, interact with other hopefully intelligent people in the C-suite, and don't have to worry about a lot of the politics, a lot of the garbage, a lot of the noise, a lot of the useless meetings. So that's why I'm a fractional, is to avoid all the unpleasant parts of the job.
And then a question for Perryn.
Yeah,
I want to hear how a CMO functions in a construction company, because that's one area that I actually have very, very little exposure to. And I would love to hear how executives in that area function, where the interface between guys swinging the hammers and the guys doing what you do work. I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So a big part of that is there's obviously your people, the small companies that still have the owner out swinging hammers. I generally don't work with them. I'm working with the people in the office, even if they're more the home services, what we call it. I'm working with the head of finance, CFO, or the CEO, and they've already gotten out of the field. So they're trying to run like a business, and generally have no idea how to do that. They figured out how to make money, and now they just want to scale, and that's why they bring us in. But for the bigger contractors, the ones with hundreds of employees, things like that, it's kind of the same thing. They know how to do what they do. They know how to kind of win work, but they realize there's a better way. And a lot of construction marketing, and I started my career 20 years ago in construction, was actually focused on recruiting. If you're a low bid contractor, what you need is more people. You're limited by the number of people you can retain and attract. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth, was actually working with these big civil contractors that were doing roads and low bid government work. I was trying to help them recruit, and it was very brand focused. And how do we make your brand stand out against the other guys? And just 20 years ago, websites for construction were pretty bad. And I multiple times had construction executives kind of like, they would give the kids essentially marketing, because you can't screw it up. It's just marketing. They had no idea really what that really meant. And I was pretty young 20 years ago. And, I've had multiple CEOs tell me, kid, or son, we don't sell buildings off our website. And my comments was simple. Yeah, but you lose them. Because that was this is beginning 20 years ago, is when people started shopping you on the website, and they would qualify you based on your website. And if it was good or bad, they'd say, I'm going to apply with you, or I'm going to ask for work. And it was amazing. 30, 60, 90 days after you launch a new website or rebrand whatever construction company, they get more leads. No SEO, no Google AdWords, just fixing the image would make these companies more revenue and get them more people, employees. So it's big. It's kind of a weird business to business market, because you also got to deal with risk and insurance and all that. But it's fun. It's good people, is why I like it. I love to see my clients' buildings go up, and I have kind of a piece of that, help them get that client, help them attract the team to it. It's a lot of fun.
I can see where a lot of it would be brand and recruit marketing,
Yeah.
because if you can't get enough guys, you're not going to get the job done. And that seems to be the big hurdle now in the present time, is finding those guys, because for every 5 tradesmen that retire, only 2 are coming back in. So you're having a serious challenge in trying to find trained people that actually want to show up and work for the amount of money that you're willing to pay, that gets you those low bid jobs. It's tough.
What's interesting is construction is now becoming the anti-AI industry. All the accountants that are scared to lose their job because the AI are going to construction, like that's a real thing that's all of a sudden happening in the last year. But for 20 years, I've been hearing about a worker shortage, and it's real.
So, Perryn, how about you? Like, why do this job? And then what's your question for Dave?
Yeah, I love the fractional, the kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You get to know the client, you get in the brand and get deep, and you see some of the nuances, little details. You change out a word or two on the homepage, you can see the click-throughs improve. that you wouldn't see in the agency. But I love the diversity of the brands. I'll share something I learned with one client with another, without worrying about giving in too much information. But there's commonality between a roofing contractor in Omaha and a demolition contractor in New Orleans. They're both kind of having some of the same pain points. So I'm able to do that. But it's when I started my career in the agency world, and it was such churn, and it was constantly trying to feed this machine, and it was just it was hard, and I really got burnt out on that. And I went internal, and it was a mentor of mine that brought me in. It's actually the one that referred me into construction, even though he was running an IT firm. And he's like, "What are you worried about this job?" I'm like, "Working for one brand scares the shit out of me. Like, it's just boring." And they had a spin-off brands at least at 2. I'm like, oh, good, 2. I'm used to running 30. So it's this kind of balance between multiple brands and getting in deep enough that you can actually make a difference.
And your question for Dave?
Yeah. Mike, I think this is an issue with kind of all consultants, but especially fractionals, is you tend to put your head down and do work on your clients. So, like, how do you keep preventing yourself, from becoming your cobbler's kids have no shoes mentality? Essentially, how do you market yourself? How do you keep your own sales pipeline active?
That's a challenge that I think every fractional I've talked to is facing. And the answer is time prioritization. I don't take on more than 3 clients at a time, and I never sell more than 10 hours a week to any of them. So I leave that last 10 hours for me to do administration, to do billing, to do prospecting and marketing and meetings and networking and all the rest of the stuff that has to go in to keep that pipeline full. And I'm finding the 10 hours aren't adequate. You gotta do more than that, at least in the beginning, until things start to connect. I've been doing this 5 years now, and it took a long time to sort of gain some traction. And with the full-time job market exploding and or imploding, depending on how you look at it, you would know the terms better. Yeah. It's been flooded with faux fractionals out there who are just scrabbling for anything they can find. And they don't have the depth. They don't have the experience. They don't have 40 years in 16 different verticals that I do. And now they're taking up slots because they've called themselves the same thing I called myself. And it really starts to irritate after a while. But the way around that is proof in the pudding. Show what you can do. Show people that you know what you're doing. And the best revenge for all this stuff is living well. And I try and set aside time for that as well.
Sorry.
I don't know, man. You should try being in the copywriter world, but someone who doesn't. All right. Everybody. The way I explain it is, the way I tell folks is that like 95% of everyone with the title copywriter is a content writer, and 100% of all new copywriters are content writers. And so the first thing I have to tell people is like, yeah, if you're looking for someone to like write your blog, like that's not me. Like I don't move the needle on that. But it is 95%. And they just, people can call themselves what they want to call themselves. I guess that's the way it works.
I think that whole definition of terms is a big thing. I saw this. My background is actually graphic design, and graphic artist was a different term than graphic designer. And graphic artists kind of fallen away. Now you have visual designers and graphic designers, and it's interesting, and it does. People, if they've experienced one fractional CMO that didn't work, they assume they're all bad, and it happens a lot in every industry. But it's definitely a newer term that some people. We still have a lot of people like, "What do you mean by fractional? What does that even mean?"
Yes.
Still very much a newer term for a lot of people, especially in construction. We've been blessed that there's a lot of fractional CFOs in construction that they're at least used to that term, but they're not used to CMO. They're not used to CMO term in construction. It's still, and that's one of the opportunity is for us is there's not a lot of former CMOs in this space because it's construction marketing is still fairly new.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Okay, so Perryn, who should be contacting you these days, and how do you want them to do it?
Best way to find me is LinkedIn. Very active on there, and trying to put out more information about what we do with construction marketing and helping companies grow. People I'm looking for is generally general contractors, 100 million, 500 million, or trade contractors, 5 to 100 million, and then people that support the construction industry or construction tech startups. That's kind of the buckets that I like to work in.
And Dave, and how to reach you? What's the preferred way to go to LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is really the best way. As long as you spell my name right, you'll find me, and it's on the screen. So.
And Dave, how about you? Who should be contacting you these days, and how would you like them to do it?
Companies between, say, $5 and $50 million in revenue with
Mhm.
less than 200 seats that are in need of some serious marketing leadership to make sure all the cats are heading in the same direction. And the vertical almost doesn't matter. I'm vertically agnostic, but there are some strengths and weaknesses that if you contact me on LinkedIn or through the email address on the screen, or by purchasing one of these, which is my latest tome, The Marketing Doctor's Survival Notes. You can get that on my website, www.themarketingdoc.com.
All right, excellent. All right, Perryn and Dave, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks for doing episode 99. And so 99. And so thanks, guys. I
I was
really
shooting for
appreciate
100.
this.
I didn't get it.
Yeah, I'm just starting 100 in like 25 minutes.
Cool.
Oh my.
Congrats.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for watching, everyone. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone. Bye, guys.